Hey, welcome everybody to the Agency Operators Podcast. Today is episode number 70, and I'm joined by Peter Palarchio of NAV43. How are you doing, Peter?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me today, Pasha.
I'm really excited to chat with you. Thanks for coming on. So, before we jump into the world of building scalable systems and the gig economy and all of the fun stuff we're going to chat about today, just want to ask you about your background. I know that you are one of the founders and the current CEO of NAV43, and you guys are scaling very quickly and working on many different things. So, what led you to want to found a company like this? What's your background?
Yeah, my background was always in one form of marketing or another. I started in experiential and event marketing and really was working kind of saw the dawn of digital ads. Like I remember the day you could buy kind of a Facebook ad and kind of saw what the power of that was. A lot of eyeballs were shifting towards social media. And I thought that was something that was really, really interesting. It was actually some experience I had with event marketing and driving people to events when there was a transition from hard copy tickets, if everyone remembers that you would have to get from Ticketmaster see an event. When that started switching to digital, I started really begin looking at the funnel and how much was trackable. And that really piqued my interest. And that started kind of what my first version of freelancing would have been, that turned into a smaller agency that then turned into NAV43 in 2016. NAV43 now is more of a kind of full service digital marketing agency that focuses on B2B, B2C lead generation and e-commerce clients looking for growth.
Very nice. So the whole event and ticketing thing just took a pivot into websites and other types of businesses.
Yeah, it was funny actually, because sometimes we were what you would consider like an affiliate or a promoter of an event. And again, when it went from hard copy tickets to like a digital checkout platform and mobile ticketing, early days, you could just be buying brand name. You could be running Google ads and buying brands of the event and kind of collecting like affiliate. It was so new that I don't think a lot of people had kind of figured that out. But I found it really, really interesting. I loved being part of events. I loved experiential marketing. I think there's a really good place for that. But there was definitely some stressors, I think, of having one shot. And then just looking at the way the digital ecosystem was going, I knew this was something I wanted to be a part of.
So with the whole experiential thing, I mean, do you think that's taking a comeback now with all this like live shoppable video? Like how cool is that? I think personally not very cool, but it seems like in some parts of the world it's very popular, like in Asia.
Yeah, well, I know like TikTok shops are doing really, really well. But
Yeah.
I think in terms of, I think there will always be a place for experiential marketing. I think having ways of people to connect with brands in real life is important. Um, but I think it really depends on the type of brand you are, and it is very, very cost prohibitive for smaller brands and startups. Whereas, like if you're a small e-commerce store and you're launching a new mug, right? You could spin that up in a week and launch very niche campaigns to get you sales going. So I think that's really what interests me as well, is it really democratized startup businesses. And I'm going back in a while now, when you're thinking of when like Facebook ads first launched, and that was kind of my entry point into it before really starting to learn SEO, CRMs, and then now new forms of advertising when programmatic started. All of that was really interesting. It's kind of an ever-changing industry.
I guess I'm coming from mostly focusing on Amazon, and that's really based on like, hey, I'm here to solve a problem. And I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of this experiential marketing, and it's very like impulse driven. So I think of like QVC and like watching that as a kid and just thinking to myself, like, who's actually calling in and buying this? Like just like looking at the TV, but there are
Yeah.
people who like it. And like you said, it's translated to TikTok shop and those types of like, you know, demonstration from an influencer of a product that's being sponsored, but people are just like, oh, it's like, it's happening in real time. Amazon had the thing. I don't even know if they're doing it anymore. I think they still are, but they have like Amazon Live,
Mm-hmm.
and it's also like you put up, you get like one of their partner studios to you send in the product, and then their partner studio works with the live platform to like schedule a slot. Oh, your product is going to be shown at 5:30, and you watch it, and it's just like 2 minutes of them like talking about your product, and
Interesting.
it's like they track the clicks, and it's like very little.
Right.
So anyway, I don't know how people are successful with some of that. I haven't cracked that code quite yet, but I'm very simple in the sense of like I like to put something in front of people when they're actually looking for it. I feel like that's the best way. But there is a whole world of other types of marketing, and everything works in its own kind
Oh,
of
for
way.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, okay, jumping into the topic. So, building scalable systems for agencies, and also I understand that you're doing that as an offering for your clients as well, because that's basically the heart of any successful, efficient, long-standing business is having good scalable systems that can grow with the dynamic nature of how things move forward and evolve. So, do you have any kind of like key principles or things that you look for when you want to do this type of work? So, let's say somebody brings you into their organization and they say, hey, we need to implement X, Y, and Z in order to achieve this goal. Like, what are the steps that you take, or maybe some of the things that you do in the auditing process?
Yeah, I think the first thing is establishing what's a project versus a process, right? A project has kind of a dedicated team that's there with very set goals and a start and end date that then should hopefully become some type of a process within your business. So if whether I'm looking at my business or you're looking at a third party business that is saying, hey, I'm having this problem, first establish what it is. Okay, so who's the project? Who's involved? What does this project team look like? When do you want to get it started? What's the budget? What are some KPIs we're going to be monitoring in any form of kind of discovery? And then how does this then model to a process? I think then after that is really what a deep dive is in terms of discovery of whether it's learning your own business, understanding different touch points, all of those things that you need to do in any form of good discovery, with really one of the first objectives we want to come up with is either type of a RACI. And if anyone's not familiar with that, I think this is a really important acronym for anyone trying to build any type of a scalable system. And it's responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. So you're going to have either you want to call it a steering committee or a project team or whatever your team's going to call it. Really understand that and really go through the discovery process and understand all the touch points of whatever process this might be, and really try to come away with a RACI chart, because this is really going to help projects succeed, because you're going to understand where people want to be involved and where they should be involved. So who's going to be ultimately responsible? Well, multiple people can be responsible for tasks or milestones, but there can only really be one person accountable. And I don't want to necessarily say that's a finger pointing scenario, but like when milestones and dependencies don't happen, I believe in kind of ultimate accountability. It's like some person should be the person that's really pushing this. So at the end, you're like, oh, I didn't know I was responsible. If you break this down as you're kind of doing your project planning and really come away with a RACI, you're going to have many different milestones of accountability, which is really going to help. The other thing, after being responsible, people are doing tasks and people that are accountable for the overall project and sub projects and milestones, is who needs to be consulted. At least if you can get that out really early in kind of the discovery and planning periods, you won't get those people. Maybe it's an executive being like, oh, I didn't know we were doing that. Well, you got that out of the way early, right? You need to be consulted, right? We are not progressing. We are not improving unless persons XYZ are consulted and they have that C next to their name. And the last one's informed, right? And then how are we being informed? So I think that's really important. If like, I want to be informed of X, Y, and Z, I want to be just informed of the financial decisions. Does the finance team need to be informed of this? Yeah, of course. Does the marketing team need to be informed, depending which department this process might lie in place? I think coming away with the RACI is really important. Then you'll understand what the best practices are for communications. Is it an email? Is it a Slack, right? Is it a ClickUp task or something along those lines? If you can align all of that in a really good discovery and planning process, you're really going to kind of get ahead of any of the problems that might happen, because there's people behind all of these things. So now everyone's been heard, everyone's signing off on accountability, everyone's saying how they want to be communicated with, how often, where and when. And if you can walk away with that as one of the first steps, the subsequent next step to that is obviously like the project planning itself and understanding what tech systems you might use.
So you are assigning a driver, essentially,
Sure.
or maybe a tiered system of multiple drivers potentially, like you said. It's an accountability hierarchy in a way, right? And each person within that organization or within that sub organization knows exactly what they do what they're responsible for and who they are supposed to communicate with in order for everything to kind of work. So as long as that's all being mapped out and clear, then that's how you scale, right? And you can scale up or scale down.
Yeah, exactly. And I think because at the end of the day, people are behind all these processes and scalable systems. There's still people, and nowadays, obviously, a lot of technology and how that coexists. But the problems you're going to have is someone saying, "Oh, I didn't know I was supposed to do that," or "I didn't know
Hmm.
that was my responsibility," right? Or someone did something they weren't supposed to. Those are really how these systems tend to break, right? It's just like an interaction of people and technology and an outcome.
Thoughts on SOPs? Are they too rigid? Important?
Very important. I think SOPs are very important, but it's kind of the outcome after the process is documentation. So I think you all sign off on the SOP as you've gone through this project and process building. So, if you're doing kind of discovery and planning first, then going into project road mapping, right, of how long all of these things should take and have a really good plan, you're going to want to do a tech assessment at a certain point as well to make sure you're using the right technology. It's not overlapping with something else. We use ClickUp for the most part. We run our whole business on ClickUp. It has very friendly APIs for a lot of things. And then you're going to want to map and kind of diagram everything before you actually build the process. But then, yeah, the last step is an SOP. And where I think SOPs have really changed is really the advancement of AI and knowledge bases. So I think it's never been easier to set up a knowledge base. If you're on Google Drive right now, that can be your knowledge base. And if you're on any type of paid prescription for your Google email, or if you're Microsoft Copilot, if you set up your Drive the right way, the problem with SOPs is often findability and use, right? Well, okay, I'm not going to click into this. Where do I find my SOP? Is it a video? Is it this? If you store everything the right way, you can just go on your Google Drive and to click Gemini and say, how do I do this one thing? It'll give you a summation and then it'll cite the source. So that's why I think SOPs are probably more valuable than they've ever been, because you're going to get easier adoption.
I see. So you're interacting with Google's, let's say, workspace, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're interacting with Gemini in order to find the information instead of sorting through everything, and that's one of the advantages. But what about the other way around? Like, what if you need to make an update?
Yeah, I think that's kind of also in the process itself of creating processes. What is the governance for documentation updates, and who is allowed to do that? And I think that's going to also happen in your kind of project planning and RACI, that whoever is ultimately accountable, you have to understand how often and who is actually entitled to changing that SOP. Whether, let's say, if a lot of businesses work in terms of departments, we do, well, the department lead is the responsible one for updating, because they're the one that actually has a team that has to follow those processes. But at the end of the day, they still need to consult with our director of operations, who is the overall owner of any type of knowledge bases. And then, streamline, just put it in your annual calendar of audits, audit them twice a year,
That's it,
just see
just
where you're
twice a
at.
year.
Yeah. Well, depending how often things are changing in your type of business, I would say ours, there will definitely be triggers on tool changes, on personnel changes, on any type of restructuring. But I mean, you don't want to be changing your processes necessarily every week, right? There's a reason you kind of got to it. And I think that the audit part is your process may have changed without the proper documentation. Maybe someone just decided to change the way you're doing, and you're kind of stepping out of process. I'm sure that happens at a lot of different organizations, that someone just starts doing something a little differently, which is totally fine. Businesses need to be agile. But I think this is just from the actual standpoint of governance and updating the documentation.
And does the documentation need to be very granular? How great, like first step this, second step that, right? Like every single little sub process, or
So I think it's a really good question. And I think you have to assume you're hiring people within a role that have some amount of experience, right? I would understand if it's completely entry level role. But if it's that monotonous, maybe you should be using an AI agent for it anyways nowadays.
mm,
But I think there are certain things, like, we don't handcuff people to the way they understand strategy, right? Like,
mm.
we hire strategic thinkers. We have to enable them to be strategic thinkers, right? We hired them to tell us how to achieve a goal as well.
And that's the thing that kind of back to my thing about, is it too rigid to have an SOP? And, I feel like if you make it very robotic and like you have to follow these steps specifically, then you're killing that creativity. So I look at SOPs as a guardrail to
Hmm.
just have some kind of general understanding of like, how things are done, because it's better than having nothing written at all and then just like everything's out in the open, or tribal knowledge as it were. So
Yeah.
you want to avoid tribal knowledge, and you want to be able to efficiently hire people and have them feel comfortable coming in knowing exactly what they're doing, because eventually like CEOs or whoever is going to be training might be busy, might not go through every little thing, and then there's just like you're losing time on people figuring things out as they go along, and you can have a completely unsuccessful hiring experience just because you weren't prepared to bring on this person and nobody had the proper time to train them. So I think those are very foundational pieces.
Yeah, I agree. And I think tribal knowledge is a real thing. I think at any company, you're never going to be able to kind of document everything. That's why kind of experience within
Yeah.
a company really matters, and shadowing people during those onboarding things. But like I think you said, like from that onboarding, if we're onboarding a new person in a new role and they go through the training, they're going to have questions because they didn't absorb 100% of things they were trained on. So at least maybe there's a good resource for someone to go to when they do have a question or query about how you do something at your company, I think is really, really helpful. And then if obviously they still have a problem, they can reach out to you, right? And have that kind of culture, but at least then maybe they can come to you with a more solution than a problem, right? Saying if they're still having this.
Yeah, and that was my next thing, was like, what's the cultural impact of enforcing certain rules, or, SOPs or certain ways of doing things? Do you feel like there's ways that could be negative, or, how do you avoid any kind of negative?
I think it could, if you're a little too rigid, create a culture of fear, which is going to kind of handcuff your company, right? You do need to. I think a lot of the reason why some of our scalable systems have worked is that I really empowered people. I think as CEO of a small to medium sized business, most people are really scared of handing over finance, right? They really want to order finance. That's one of the first things I think you should kind of get rid of. Why do you want to be kind of tracking all that if you have really the right systems and checks and balances for you to maybe check in on it once a week or every 2 weeks, as long as you're getting the right information and set up the right automations of the information you need where you don't need to be consulted? I think that's really helpful. I do think something you kind of said as guardrails, as SOPs, I think that's important. Like it is, some of these SOPs are risk mitigation for sure. So let's say we're a professional services business, billable hours are a very real thing. Someone changes scope, right? Well, you need to have a process and an escalation for that. They can't necessarily just go to the person they're talking to that might be 2 levels down from billing, and they just go do a bunch of work, right? So that's an example of something that you would specify as like a guardrail. There needs to be an SOP for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's just like, first of all, client expectations and management internally, and understanding. And this is the hard one personally in my agency, is unit level economics.
Mm-hmm.
How do you track it down to which client is profitable, which client is not profitable? Because at some point, feelings or vibes don't cut it anymore. Once you get to a
Yeah,
certain size, right, you have to have everything tracked, and unfortunately people will have to report or try to track how much time they're spending on a certain account.
for sure. And that's something I think, if you want me to go more depth on how we address that, I can kind of
Yeah,
comment.
please.
I think something every agency has done is understanding your customer profitability and maybe your overall department profitability. So this is again something why I make mention ClickUp a lot, because I run my whole agency on this. Is that is where we are doing our time tracking. So our time tracking is actually integrated with QuickBooks, where we do our accounting. QuickBooks has the ability to create lots of different cost categories and client numbers. So when we onboard a client, what they might not see on their invoice is a series of numbers that become before their client name. So that's actually their client number, and then the department we're in, and any sub departments. So their client number is sequential. So whatever number you kind of onboarded us. And the next thing is actually their service offering. So what we've done, what I think a lot of service industries might not do, is actually leverage SKUs for our products. So are you doing SEO? That's, let's say, 4130 if you're a retainer. A sub number of that would be, are we
Mm.
creating content for you? Right. And then is that on a retainer or a project basis? Because then I can easily pull up, if you're ever trying to sell a service businesses, people ask you that question very quickly. How much MRR do you have versus project? And you want to answer that quickly. What the other side of that, what's all tied to that, is actually employee codes. So the employees are coded based off of the department they work in, because finance and accountants understand numbers a lot better than saying, oh, they work in the SEO department. So if you can do that hard work for your finance team of actually creating a code structure, QuickBooks understands that really easily. Then it's all labeled for your accountants to kind of also audit that, because if you ever go back and say, oh, we were spending all this time reallocating. No, don't you know that client XYZ is the SEO client? It's like, no, they're your accountant. They're never going to get that. Make it easy for them. And then we create that, and that's part of onboarding, that you're given kind of an employee number. So that way you'll always actually get allocated to the right part. We have an automation set up with QuickBooks that does your hours tracking, that is then connected to invoicing, that then comes back up through ClickUps, that gives us a weekly customer profitability report. So that's kind of all automated with a few easy steps. Might sound hard. I'm not an advanced API developer. This can all be done within ClickUp itself,
Very cool.
and kind of QuickBooks. Yeah. So
you don't like Asana?
I did actually really like Asana for a while. I think I was on Asana probably till like 2019, 2020-ish. We made a migration to ClickUp. So I'm sure Asana can do a lot of the same things. So I know a lot of people like it. I liked it a lot. But we've been a ClickUp shop for almost 5 years now. So I haven't even looked at it in quite some time. So I'm sure the functionality might be there.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What are the primary services that you guys offer?
Yeah. So we started as kind of a paid media and SEO shop, which are still kind of our core services today. And on the paid media side, we really focus on Google, Meta, and LinkedIn. And then as time evolved, we had to add CRO, right? As you kind of start adding more things to the funnel, understanding maybe why people aren't converting and all of those things. And then that really led to, with the dawn of kind of like machine learning in the ad platforms, you need to be kind of a CRM pro. So we looked at CRM partnerships. We became HubSpot partners, which I think is really good for the lead gen side of things, B2B or B2C lead gen. And then on e-commerce, we noticed a lot of people obviously coming to us with Shopify sites. So we became Klaviyo partners as well. And then became partners with on some of the content side. Obviously, if we're creating blogs and we need to do a lot of content strategy, we became partners with Canva, obviously to create kind of custom graphics for our clients and just create really good content for SEO. And then now we do offer AI and automations for some of the things we've been talking about.
So cool. And if somebody wanted to reach out, what's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, our website is nav43, nav43.com. And my email is Peter, Peter, at nav43.com. I check it, so don't hesitate to reach out.
Great. Well, we'll keep it short and sweet, but I think we're getting close to time here. I really appreciate all of the insights today. There's a lot of good gold nuggets here for anybody in any business who's looking to scale and manages a team. So I appreciate all that.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me, Pasha.
Yeah. Thanks again, Peter. And thanks everyone for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.